Hi guys, how are you? Hope you are doing well. Welcome to my channel. Today let us discuss about modes of reproduction. Coming to the reproduction, where the reproduction is the development of a new individuals from the pre-existing ones, and the manner in which they originate is called modes of reproduction. The modes of reproduction determines the genetic constitution of crop plants and whether the plants are homozygous or heterozygous. The vegetative parts of a plant are roots, stem, leaves. The reproductive parts of plants or flowers. In this, the various modes of the reproduction found in the crop plants may be broadly grouped into the two categories like asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction, where asexual reproduction means the new plants are produced without the help of the seeds. In sexual reproduction, the new plants are produced from the seeds. Coming to the asexual reproduction, where asexual reproduction is the type of reproduction that does not involve the fusion of gametes or change in the number of chromosomes. The new plants may be either developed from vegetative parts of a plant like vegetative reproduction, or they may arise from the embryos that develop without the fertilization, which is called as apomixis. Coming to the vegetative reproduction, here we come across a new plants which develop from the portion of the body of a parent, and also the vegetative reproduction may occur through modified underground and subaerial stems and through also bulbils. And some of the examples of the vegetative reproduction can be observed like potato has these small buds which called eyes. The part of the potato of the eye is cut and planted in the soil, and it can be grown as a new plant. And coming to the ginger also planted in this, a part of a ginger is planted in a soil and it can be grown into a new plant. Coming to the bryophyllum leaf, where cuttings develop into a new plant. And in the cactus, the part of the cactus plant is planted in soil, we can get a new plant. In this slide, you can observe some of the examples which comes under vegetative reproduction, where money plant, the part of the plant is cutted and planted in a soil which develops into a new plant, where in potatoes, eyes were planted, cut and planted were developed into a new plant. In ginger, a small portion of the ginger were planted in the soil and grown into a new plant. In bryophyllum, you can observe that a single leaf can also turn into a new plant. And cactus, these all are the examples which comes under vegetative part of a reproduction. Coming to the vegetative propagules, let us discuss about runners, suckers, stolons, bud, rhizomes and bulbs, where we come across underground stems. Underground modifications of a stem are generally which serve as the storage organs and contain many buds which develop into shoots, and they produce the plants after rooting. Some of the examples of such modifications are like tuber, which examples include like potato, and bulb, where in bulb the example is onion and garlic. Where in subaerial stems, these modifications include runners, stolons, suckers, etc. Subaerial stems are used for propagation of mint and palm. Coming to the bulbils. Bulbils are the modified flowers that develop into plants directly without formation of seeds. These are vegetative bodies as their development does not involve fertilization. The lower flowers in the inflorescence of garlic naturally develop into bulbils. Example is like cardamom. And also these rhizomes which comes under underground stems and buds where artificial vegetative reproduction occurs. Next, coming to the next slide. Let us discuss about the fragmentation, where fragmentation include example like spirogyra. In this method, the plant breaks up into two or more fragments and each fragment grow into a new plant. Here we can see where the septa is there. The plant is divided into a part into one or two parts where we can see the nucleus, septum, spiral chloroplast, and in this picture, you can observe the fragmentation in the spirogyra. Coming to the spore formation, fungus example is fungus, fern, etc. In this method, the fungus produces spores. The spores germinate and produces the new plant. The spore formation in the fungus is observed in this diagram. Coming to the artificial means, the multiplication of plants by vegetative parts through artificial methods is known as artificial vegetative reproduction. Such reproduction occurs by cutting of shoots, roots, and layering, grafting, and budding, etc. You can observe some of the cuttings of rose plant where plants such as coleus and money plant are propagated through the stem cuttings, where a portion of the stem cutting containing the node and internodes is placed in the moist soil and allowed to a root. In some species, stems can start producing a root even when placed only in water. For example, the leaves of the African violet will root if kept in the water undisturbed for several weeks. Coming to the layering. Layering is a method in which a stem is attached to the plant, is bent and covered with soil. Young stems that can be bent easily without any injury are preferred. Jasmine and bougainvillea paper flower can be propagated this way. In this slide, you can observe the grafting method, where the grafting has long been used to produce novel varieties of roses, citrus species, and other plants. In grafting, two plant species are used. Where two plants are used, the part of the stem of the desirable plant is grafted onto the rooted plant called stalk, and the part that is grafted or attached is called scion. You can observe in this figure. Both are cut at an oblique angle, any angle other than the right angle, placed in close contact with each other, and then held together as seen in the figure. Matching up these two surfaces as closely as possible is extremely important because this will be holding the plant together. The vascular system of two plants grow and fuse, forming a graft. After a period of time, the scion starts producing shoots and eventually bearing flowers and fruits. And grafting is widely used in viticulture like grape growing and the citrus industries. The scions capable of producing a particular fruit variety are grafted onto the rootstock with a specific resistance to the diseases. Here you can see the significance of vegetative reproduction. Vegetatively reproducing species offer unique possibilities in breeding. They have the quicker method. It is not only the method of reproduction and they does not produce available seeds. And coming to a desirable plant may be produced used as a variety directly regardless of the whether it is homozygous or heterozygous. Coming to the further mutant buds, branches, or seedlings, if desirable, can be multiplied and directly used as a varieties. However, it does not allow transfer of genes cytoplasm from one variety into another. It is less expensive method of multiplying of the plants. Coming to the apomixis, where in apomixis the seeds are where the types of apomixis are first one is parthenogenesis, apogamy, apospore, adventive embryony. Coming to the parthenogenesis, where parthenogenesis refers to the development of embryo from the egg cell without fertilization, where there are two types of parthenogenesis, where which is having haploid selenium nigrum and diploid taraxacum, where parthenogenesis having two types like gonial parthenogenesis and somatic parthenogenesis. In gonial parthenogenesis, embryos develop from egg cell, while in somatic parthenogenesis, they arise from some other cell of an embryo sac. Apogamy. The origin of embryo from either synergids or antipodal cells of an embryo sac is known as apogamy. There are types like haploid and diploid. Examples like allium, iris, and some other species were included. In the apospore, the first cell of the ovule, which is lying outside the embryo sac, develops into another embryo sac without reduction. The embryo then develops directly from the diploid cell egg cell without fertilization. While coming across the types of apospore, there are two types. One is generative apospore, another one is somatic apospore. Coming to the adventive embryony, where the adventive embryony, the development of an embryo directly from the diploid cell of the ovule, which is lying outside the embryo sac, belonging to the either nucellus or integuments, is referred to as adventive embryony. We're coming to the classification of Apomixis. First, it is having the recurrent Apomixis, where embryo sac develops from diploid cells and there will be no reduction of chromosomes and the process repeated from generation to generation. And coming to the non-recurrent Apomixis, where the plants produced by this method having a haploid set of the chromosomes and they are usually sterile. The process is not repeated as that of recurrent. Coming to the role of apomixis in plant breeding. The role of apomixis in plant breeding includes the rapid production of pure lines. It is helpful in the rapid increases the production of the pure lines and the maintenance of the superior genotypes and conservation of heterosis. Coming to the sexual reproduction, where the reproduction involves the fusion of male and female gametes to form a zygote, which develops into an embryo. In crops, male and female gametes are produced in specialized structures called flowers. Coming to the flowers. Flowers are the reproductive parts of the plant, where the stamen is the male reproductive part and the pistil is the female reproductive part. Flowers which have only stamen or only the pistil are called unisexual flowers, which includes the examples like maize, papaya, and cucumber. Coming to the flowers which have both the stamen and the pistil are called bisexual flowers, which include examples like rose, mustard, petunia, etc. The stamen has a filament and the anther. The anther consists of pollen grains which contain the male gametes, and the pistil has the stigma, the style, and ovary. You can observe in this diagram where pistil consisting of stigma, style, ovary. Ovary consists of ovules, and in the structure of the anther we can see the pollen sacs where the pollen grains are embedded. And in the sexual reproduction, the male and the female gametes fuse together to form a zygote. You can observe the structure of the flower, which is having the stamens, anthers, pistil. You can observe the flower. Coming to the reproductive parts of a flower, the reproductive organs in the flowering plants is the stamens, the male organs, carpel is the female organ, where the anther and the filament were together called as stamens, and style, stigma, ovary, and ovules were included in the structure of the carpel. You can observe in the diagram where the structure of the stamen and the structure of the carpel. Coming to the process of sexual reproduction. Sporogenesis. The production of microspores and megaspores is known as sporogenesis. And coming to the microsporogenesis. Microspores are produced in the anthers. It is called microsporogenesis. Where megasporogenesis, the megaspore are produced in the ovule is known as the process is known as megasporogenesis. And the gametogenesis, the production of male and the female gamete in the microspore respectively is known as gametogenesis. Coming to the pollination, where in the pollination the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a flower is known as pollination. The pollen grains are transferred by wind, water or insects. If the pollen grains lands on the stigma of a same flower, it is called self-pollination. And if the pollen grains of one flower lands on the stigma of another flower, it is called cross-pollination. Let us discuss about the pollination and fertilization and also the sporogenesis. Where coming to the flower, we are having the pedicel, floral axis and perianth, corolla and calyx, style, stigma, micropyle. We're coming to the sporogenesis. The production of microspores and megaspores is known as sporogenesis. Microspores are produced in the anthers while megaspores are produced in the ovules. Coming to the microgametophytes, where microsporogenesis, each anther having the four pollen sacs which contain numerous mother cells. Each pollen mother cell undergoes meiosis to produce the four haploid cells are thus microspores. This is known as microsporogenesis. And coming to the microgametogenesis, this refers to the production of male gamete or sperms during the maturation of pollen. The microspore nucleus divides mitotically to produce a generative and a vegetative tube nucleus. And the pollen is generally released in binucleate stage, where the pollen lands on the stigma of a flower. It is known as pollination. And shortly after the pollination, the pollen germinates and the pollen tube enters the stigma and grows through the style. The generative nucleus now undergoes a mitotic division to produce a male gametes or sperms. The pollen along with the pollen tube is known as microgametophyte. Coming to the megasporogenesis. Megasporogenesis occurs in the ovules which are present inside the ovary, where a single cell in each ovule differentiate into megaspore mother cells which undergoes meiosis to produce a four haploid megaspores. Three of the megaspores degenerative, leaving one functional megaspore per ovule. Mega Coming to the megagametogenesis, the nucleus of the functional megaspore divides mitotically to produce the four nuclei. In the most of the crop plants, megaspore nucleus undergoes three mitotic divisions to produce the eight nuclei. Three of these nuclei move to one pole and to produce a central egg cell, and 2 gives rise to antipodal cells, 2 uninuclei remaining in the center, the polar nuclei, to fuse to form and development of an embryo sac from a megaspore is known as megagametogenesis. Embryo sac generally contains one egg cell, two synergids, and it also contains 3 antipodals, all are haploid, and one diploid secondary nucleus. Coming to the fertilization, where the fusion of one of the two sperms with the egg cell producing a diploid zygote is known as fertilization. The fusion of remaining sperm with the secondary nucleus leading to the formation of triploid primary endosperm nucleus, which is known as triple fusion. The zygote divides mitotically to produce a diploid embryo. The primary endosperm nucleus produces the endosperm through repeated mitotic divisions. And coming to the notice of during the seed development, endosperm, which provides the nutrition to the development of the embryo, the endosperm may become absorbed completely in examples like legume, or it may form major portion of the seeds in the examples of monocot like maize, wheat, etc., and in some dicots like castor, brassica species, etc. Coming to the modes of pollination, where modes of pollination includes autogamy, the development of seed by self-pollination, and several mechanisms that promotes the self-pollination or bisexuality, homogamy, cleistogamy, and chasmogamy. We're coming to the cleistogamy. In such cases, the flowers do not open at all. This ensures the complete self-pollination, and since foreign pollen cannot reach the stigma of a closed flower. Cleistogamy occurs in some of the varieties of wheat, oats, and barley and other grasses. Coming to the chasmogamy, where in some species flowers open but only after the pollination has taken place. This occurs in many cereals such as wheat, barley, and oats. Since the flowers do open, some cross-pollination may occur. In this cleistogamy, only self-pollination. In chasmogamy, we can observe cross-pollination also. Coming to the allogamy, where it is showing the development of a seed by cross-pollination, and some of the mechanisms which promote the cross-pollination are dicliny, dichogamy, heterostyle, hercogamy, self-incompatibility, and male sterility. Coming to the dicliny, the flowers are either staminate or pistillate. Coming to the dichogamy, where stamens and pistil of hermaphrodite flowers may mature at different times, therefore it facilitates the cross-pollination. Coming to the heterostyle, where heterostyle in such flowers the stigma and the anthers grow at different heights, which does not favor the self-pollination. And coming to the hercogamy, where it shows the mechanical or structural barriers. In some of the flowers, the pollen of the flower cannot reach the stigma of the same flower. Coming to the self-incompatibility, where self-incompatibility refers to the failure of a pollen from the flower to fertilize the same flower or the other flower on the same plant. It shows the self-incompatibility. And coming to the male sterility refers to the absence of functional pollen grains in otherwise hermaphrodite flowers. The male sterility is not common in natural populations. But male sterility is of two types, like genetic and cytoplasmic. Cytoplasmic male sterility is termed as cytoplasmic genetic, whether when the restorer genes are known. Coming to the next, the significance of the pollination. The modes of pollination plays an important role in plant breeding. It has an impact on five important aspects, like it involves the significance of pollination in gene action, where in the genetic constitution and adaptability, genetic purity, transfer of gene. In the five aspects, the significance of pollination shows major importance. Coming to the process of fusion of male and female gametes to form a zygote, which is ultimately known as fertilization. After the fertilization, the zygote develops into an embryo. The ovule then develops into a seed and the ovary develops into the fruit. You can observe the diagram fertilization in a flowering plant, where it is having the pollen grains, stigma, style, pollen tube, ovary, embryo sac, micropyle, egg, polar nuclei, structure of the flowering plant, where the fertilization in a flowering plant is observed in this diagram. Coming to the seed dispersal, the carrying of away of seeds from one place to another is called dispersal of seeds. Seeds are dispersed by wind, water, and animals. Seeds dispersed by wind or light. They have wings or hairs so that they easily blown away by the wind. Example like drumsticks, maple, sunflower, oak. Seeds dispersed by water have spongy or fibrous outer cover so that they can float on water. Example coconut. Where coming to the dispersal by the animals, they have some spines which hooks so that they can attach to the body of animals. Example xanthium. Coming to the advantages and disadvantages of the asexual and sexual reproduction. The asexual reproduction advantages. It does not require special cells or lot of energy. Can produce offspring quickly. In a stable environment, it creates a large thriving population. The disadvantages of the asexual reproduction are it is having the limited ability to adapt and has the face massive die-off if the environmental changes. And coming to the sexual reproduction, lots of variation within the species and able to live in a variety of environmental settings, able to adapt the changes of environmental settings while asexual reproduction doesn't. Disadvantages of sexual reproduction are needs time and energy and produces these small populations. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel.